So the Queen has a 10th great-grandchild, finally. I was going to say on the way, but it's actually here, and it came quite quickly, didn't it?
Yes, it came very quickly, and Mike Tyndall gave the full account of it on his podcast, didn't he?
It was like on a podcast like this. Like I said to you, "Oh, Lizzie, have you had a good week?" And you just sit there and list off, "Well, I did this, I did that, and oh, I had a baby." You know,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's going to happen. I kind of think I'd know if you were.
Yeah. Also, I didn't do that.
No, you didn't. Do that. Are you going to surprise us with anything else you've done this week?
No. It's back to at-home working and looking at the same ball.
Yeah, but in a way, it's quite nice not being in the office after having been there so much over the past few weeks. So it's been nice to work from home for a bit.
Yeah, and you just said that you've got the house to yourself for the first time in.
That is a very unusual thing. It's very quiet. I've actually left the doors open because there's no chance that anyone's going to run in and disturb me for once. So it's actually good. It's like quiet. We like that. So welcome to the Royal Rota. Hope you are all well after a manic few weeks. It's a little calm has been restored to royal lands this week. There is a royal trip. It's happening in Greece. We'd love to be there, but as you can see, we're not in Athens.
No.
What's the weather like in Athens? Does it look quite nice for Charles and Camilla?
Yeah, it looks really nice. Let's not dwell on it.
No, could have gone, but then there's the whole quarantine thing. So on balance, we thought better not. But anyhow, we'll tell you all about that. We will tell you about the baby. We'll tell you about jobs. You know, some people have got new jobs. The Sussex section is continuing as much as many people want us to stop talking about them. I'm afraid they keep making news, so we'll keep talking about them. What else is on my list or your list?
My list. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, well, why don't you do the list rather than me do the list and you repeat it? You could just do the list.
I could just do the list, couldn't I? So at the top of my list this week, I've got the Royals mark the National Day of Reflection. So that was March the 23rd, and that was a whole year on from when the UK first went into that national lockdown. So they were all marking that and reflecting on the last year. We've had, as you say, some lovely royal baby news this week, a 10th great-grandchild for the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh. And we also got to see some new photographs of another new arrival. Prince Harry didn't get one, but two new jobs this week. He's been busy.
He's self-optimizing, I believe, yeah?
He is, correct.
Being the best version of himself.
Being the best version of himself, yeah. Yep. All change at Archwell. Job role changes there this week, announced this week. The Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall are in Greece. They've actually just boarded to return back to the UK. It was quite a quick visit to celebrate the 200th anniversary of Greek independence.
Happy birthday to Greece.
Happy birthday to Greece. And the Queen and Duchess of Cornwall, they joined forces this week to thank Royal Voluntary Service volunteers.
Right, good. I'm going to start, controversially, with some news about some royals that you don't hear very much about. And this week, surprised us all with some news about a new arrival. Why don't we start with baby news?
Let's start with baby news.
Let's start with baby news. So, the Queen's got a daughter. She's called Princess Anne. She's got a daughter called Zara. She married a guy called Mike Tyndall, who used to be a rugby player. He does a rugby podcast. And on the rugby podcast, he had a chat with his mates. Have a listen.
I was actually generally angry after the England game. Not at you, Genji, but just angry.
I'd be angry at me too.
And then that anger just dissipated in 4.5 minutes of beautiful French joy. And then Sunday got even better because a little baby boy arrived at my house.
Oh,
You're kidding!
No, yeah.
Well done, mate.
Congrats. That's unbelievable. Let's not talk about rugby. How are you getting on?
Yeah, brilliant. Brilliant. So, 6:00 last night.
That's unreal. Have we got a name?
We haven't got a name yet. No, we're still working on it. We've always struggled with that. We never picked one before they arrive.
James is a good name.
Yeah, mate, possibly.
Oh, sorry.
James.
That's
Tyndall?
my middle name. I can't do it.
Okay.
Since this is unbelievable, how healthy? How bonny?
8 pounds full. Very
Solid.
bonny. Arrived very quickly. Didn't make it to hospital. On the bathroom floor.
You're kidding me.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Mate, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And how dare I ask, how hands-on were you, or did you have someone to kind of just direct?
Fortunately, Zara's friend Dolly is who has been there. She's actually more important than I am at making sure that she's been at every 3 of my children's births. She was there and recognised that we wouldn't have got to hospital in time. So yeah, it was run into the gym, get a mat, get into the bathroom, get the mat on the floor, towels down, brace.
So it all happened rather quickly.
Rather quickly, an at-home royal baby. He arrived on the bathroom floor because it seemed that he wanted to get out rather quicker than they were anticipating. So
yeah, my sister had one of those, and I always find it quite sort of frightening that it just basically you get no warning and bam, it happens. And when you think how much medical intervention you normally are used to having around you, or people are when they have babies, it must be quite a frightening experience. I don't know, but congratulations to them nonetheless. It was obviously a safe arrival. And a grandson, number 1 for Princess Anne.
Yeah, he's called Lucas Philip Tyndall. So a nod there to the Duke of Edinburgh, but also a nod to Mike's father, who is also called Philip. So
yes.
Really nice family connections there.
And Lucas has got a lot of girl cousins and a lot of girl sisters. He's kind of outnumbered in that particular family.
Yeah, well, Mike Tyndall's made no secret of the fact that he would have really loved to have had a little boy, and he got his wish. So a brother for Mia and Lena, and
a cousin for Savannah and Isla.
Yeah.
I'm always like relieved when I get that right, because it's the real depth of my great-grandchild knowledge. Can you do all 10?
Yes.
Can you do all 10 in order that they were born?
No, I can do them in their groups, though.
Do them by family. I'm sure we've done this before, but you just keep you in practice.
George, Charlotte and Louis.
Yeah.
Archie.
And Archie, yeah.
Isla and Savannah. Mia and Lena. August. And now Lucas.
Ah, very good.
And it will soon be number 11 when Harry and Meghan's second arrives in the summer.
Their little girl, yes, as they told us a few weeks ago. So some happy baby news for them, and for Princess Anne as well, a grandson. And I wonder whether Mike Tyndall's going to make this boy play rugby or not.
Well, it's really sweet on the podcast when he said that they were straight down to watch some sport together.
Yes, exactly. Me and a boy. So good luck to them. Congratulations to them. Very happy news. Shall we talk then about...
just while we're on babies, should we just show the photographs that Princess usually posted?
Let's have a baby fest at the top then. Okay, so...
a whole baby belt, yeah.
Okay, so this is... now, I never know whether I should say, and we've been told, haven't we? We can say August or August for... because maybe it's slightly Germanic, but August has been shown again by his mother on her birthday, presumably.
It was, she posted after her birthday just to say thank you so much for all the messages and that she had the best present she could wish for. And it's a really sweet family photograph of the 3 of them, and August wearing a little, he's got something wrapped around him with his name on the back, and then a very sweet picture of Jack Brooksbank cradling him, and you can just see his head popping over and his eyes. So they look absolutely besotted and thrilled and happy, and just sort of really enjoying having him.
And of course, if you're watching this podcast on YouTube, then you will have seen the picture as Lizzie spoke about it. If and there it is. Just if you're not watching on YouTube, then this is where you need to go. The ITV News Royals Instagram page, where we put up all this sort of kind of stuff all throughout the week. It even includes pictures of Princess Anne at the bin lorry depot. We could even, why don't we talk about that now? I mean, there we are. We'll show you the picture now. These are a couple of pictures of Princess Anne, who went to see the refuse men and the recyclers to thank them for the work that they've done during the pandemic. And I was thinking, the royal family, they've been around the nurses and the doctors and the medics, and they've spoken to the police and the other key workers and the teachers they thanked as well. No one's been to thank the bin men. So up pop Princess Anne.
Yes, it's the first one in person, but I think lots of the messages have reflected on the key workers, and of course it's one of the areas which has kept going during the pandemic, even in the depths of lockdown, to kind of keep the country moving. They're an essential part of the infrastructure to keep the country moving.
No one wants their bins overflowing, do they? So the refuse and recycling men got their thanks, their royal thanks from Princess Anne this week. Now, she was at a site in Cambridgeshire called Waterbeach. If you live in that area, I'm sure you take your refuse and recycling there. And the council was saying that actually the bin men have had a really hard time this year because they've actually done more work because we've all been working from home and therefore producing much more waste. So one of the unintended consequences of lockdown is that these poor men and women have had to do a lot more work. There we are. I wasn't going to talk about them, but I did. So that's where you find the pictures. It's on our Instagram, ITV News Royals. Right then, let's talk about one of the big events of the week, and talking of lockdowns and pandemics, but a reflection, a National Day of Reflection, it was called here. The royal family took part in it. Let's start at the very top, where the Queen sent some flowers. Here is the bouquet. Lizzie's about to tell you what was in them because I've forgotten. Some narcissi and some iris or something. But anyway, this was flowers sent to her, the hospital where Prince Philip, her husband, had his heart surgery.
Yeah, so the bouquet was made up of the following: irises, tulips, mixed narcissi.
I think they're mini daffodils. You know that when you get diddy daffodils, they're only about that big.
And
in my garden, actually, so having a look at them.
Ranunculus is the last one.
Whatever that is.
Yeah,
I could Google it, but
yeah, neither of us are going to be florists or on gardening programs anytime soon.
I'm not going to be on Gardener's World on Radio 4 anytime soon.
It was a pretty bouquet though,
and a note.
And there was a message accompanying the bouquet which said, "As we look forward to a brighter future together, today we pause to reflect on the grief and loss that continues to be felt by so many people and families, and pay tribute to the immeasurable service of those who have supported us all over the last year."
And in case you didn't believe me, that is also on our ITV News Instagram page, along with the notes that you can read. There we are. Can you see that? There we are. The notes that you can read that the Queen wrote. So again, if you're out running and listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, be that Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get this podcast from, and you think, what are those pictures they're talking about? Well, you know now where to find them. So that was the Queen. That's what she did. She's obviously got Philip back with her in Windsor. No more news on him, and that's not in itself unusual. Prince Charles, he gave a message, a video message, part of, because this day was organised by Marie Curie, the sort of end-of-life charity, who do fantastic work for people when they are at the end of their life. And they organised this event. Prince Charles is a patron of Marie Curie. Have a listen to part of the message that he put out as patron of Marie Curie.
Ladies and gentlemen, over the past year, our country has been through a trial which has tested our resolve and our resilience in countless ways. We've all been inspired by the resourcefulness we have witnessed, humbled by the dedication shown by so many, and moved beyond words by the sacrifices we have seen. We are emerging from this time with a renewed confidence in one another and with a strengthened faith in our society, richly diverse in its many communities and cultures, but united in its commitment to the common good and the welfare of others, particularly those most vulnerable. As we do so, it is right that we pause to remember those whose lives have been so tragically cut short. As patron of Marie Curie, I am so very proud that this charity, which does so much to help people at the end of their lives, has taken a lead in helping the entire country cope with losses we had never foreseen, but must never forget. Whatever our faith or philosophy may be, let us take a moment together to remember those who have been lost, to give thanks for their lives, and to acknowledge the inexpressible pain of parting. In their memory, let us resolve to work for a future inspired by our highest values that have been displayed so clearly by the people of this country through this most challenging of times.
So I think a moving set of words from Prince Charles there in that speech. And as he released that, I think on the morning of the Day of Reflection, William and Kate went back to the place where 10 years ago, almost to the day now, was it April 2011 they got married at Westminster Abbey?
Yeah, so they were back there. The Abbey is now acting as a sort of pop-up vaccination centre.
Not a bad place to get your vaccine, really, is it?
Well, yeah, an amazing place to go and get your vaccine. But yeah, they were there visiting the vaccination centre. And while they were there, they also they sort of privately marked the national moment of reflection, which was at midday.
Yeah, and they did it with, they lit some candles, didn't they? When the country paused to remember, there were people outside hospitals, people outside schools, people outside vaccination centres who paused to remember the death toll. And it depends how you count the death toll in this country. It's about 126,000 if you include those who had COVID-19 on their death certificate and died within 4 weeks of it. It's about 150,000 near on if you include all those who had COVID-19 recorded on their death certificate. That's a lot of people to remember. And the country paused for a minute to reflect on quite what a year it has been.
Yeah, it's just the most awful numbers and the number of people that have been affected by this pandemic. And it's crazy to think really that it's a year ago that we were first locked down.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, I was walking home and a lot of the buildings were lit up in yellow. This is on my Twitter of a picture that I took of the Millennium Wheel, as I still call it, or the London Eye, which was lit up yellow. So that's my picture. But then have a look at some of these. There was like a lighthouse in Northumberland. There was cathedrals. There was all sorts of places across the country, a candle outside Downing Street, just lighting a candle because people couldn't be together. And that was the way that we all remembered.
Yeah, and there was one other member of the royal family that marked the National Day of Reflection, and that was Prince Harry, who has written the foreword for a new book called Hospital by the Hill. And that is for children and young people who have lost loved ones due to COVID-19. And
he wrote about the pain of losing his own mother, didn't he? Which was quite, I thought, quite a moving few words from him in the foreword of that book.
Yeah, he reflected, didn't he, on his own experiences and how he sort of could understand how some of these children might be feeling. He said, "If you are reading this book, it's because you've lost your parent or a loved one. And while I wish I was able to hug you right now, I hope this story is able to provide you some comfort in knowing that you are not alone. When I was a young boy, I lost my mum. At the time, I didn't want to believe it or accept it, and it left a huge hole inside of me. I know how you feel, and I want to assure you that over time, that hole will be filled with so much love and support."
Yeah, as I say, quite a moving message from Prince Harry. I mean, what, more than 20 years ago now, wasn't it? 23, isn't it? It's just such a long time ago that he lost his mum when he was just so young. So, and hopefully that book will help many children who unfortunately have suffered the same thing. And actually, I think that the main cause of it was to support children who had lost a parent who was working on the front line in COVID, like if their mother was a nurse who died from COVID. So a really, really important contribution for that book. the Queen and Camilla joined forces this week, and I suppose one of the things that we were quite amused by was the way in which the Queen greeted her daughter-in-law. I don't know why we all found it so amusing, but we kind of did, didn't we?
Yeah, I guess it was the informality of it, but that we shouldn't be surprised by that. I mean, Camilla is her daughter-in-law. Yes. It was just really sweet.
Yeah, well, okay. Well, when you have a listen, I mean, and then see what you think.
Good morning. Hello, Camilla.
Morning. Good morning. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Very nice to see you.
So I couldn't be prouder of the way in which Britain has stepped forward to volunteer. 12.7 million is the current working figure for people who've stepped forward, many of them for the first time.
It was obviously last year when the pandemic hit and we seen the reach out for volunteers, and I decided I wanted to do something if I could give back in just a little way. To know that you could be the only person someone speaks to in that day through no fault of their own, I'm very, very humbled by the whole experience.
It's meeting new people, it's getting the community involved with each other, and it's always filled with laughter. I love it.
The interaction with people in the community, which I think is such a lovely part of the Books on Wheels service.
Family, part-time working and volunteering requires a bit of juggling. My wife and I try to think more about those in our community and what we can do to make their lives better.
We couldn't have done without you, so thank you. And I'm going to hand over to Her Majesty.
I think it's wonderful work, and I do thank everybody and all the others too who've been volunteering. It's been a great help over these very difficult years, and very nice to meet you all.
So that call, they joined forces to thank Royal Voluntary Service volunteers, and it marks a year since the charity launched their NHS Volunteers Responders Scheme, and they've recruited almost 1 million volunteers since the pandemic began to help with the efforts in, whether people need medicines delivering, food picking up, check-in and chat calls that we know lots of the members of the royal family have taken part in. So they've been a huge effort. So that call was designed to thank some of those volunteers in the charity, in the Queen in her role as patron and Camilla is president.
I was just about to say the Queen's patron, the Queen's president, but you got there before me.
I got there.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, indeed. Hello, Camilla. I just found that quite amusing. But what's she going to say? Hello, Duchess. You just don't really do. Talking of titles, now there's been some talk this week when Harry announced the 2 new jobs that he's got, whether or not he should have used a sort of Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex, because they both carried, I think, the full title. So have a look at these couple of images that were released. Now, one of the jobs that he's got is for a place called BetterUp, an organisation that does mental health support. And then there was a second role that he took this week, wasn't there?
Yeah, so one job with the BetterUp and the other with the Aspen Institute.
Yeah, the Aspen Institute, where he's listed, looking at my Twitter when I posted the job, he's listed as a humanitarian, military vet, mental wellness advocate and environmentalist. It doesn't say as part of his bio and former member of the royal family. It's kind of, but then that might be pretty obvious because the title, as you can see there, says Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex. So that's one of his roles when, and the Aspen Institute has got this new commission on information disorder. So basically on kind of fake news and stuff, and he's one of the commissioners, one of many, I should say. There's quite a few on there on that job. That felt like more like a sort of advisory role, whereas the other job for BetterUp, he's actually got a job title, head of impact or content. No, impact.
Is the Chief Impact Officer.
Impact Officer, right. Now, what does a Chief Impact Officer do?
This is a good question, and one we have debated.
Yes.
And not one we've heard of, but one would assume aims to make an impact.
Yes. Now, of this new role with BetterUp, Harry wrote that being attuned with your mind is critical to finding your own version of peak performance. Now, he said he was really excited to take up this role. He spoke about how you need to self-optimize. I suppose, how would I sum up what he wrote? He's trying to be a better version of himself. And I think the language, if I can put this delicately, was quite Californian and very un-royal family. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. What would your assessment be of Harry's little biography?
Less formal than perhaps we would have seen before. I think this work is going to build on the importance of mental health and mental resilience, as he calls it, and he will be focusing on 4 key areas: driving advocacy and awareness for mental fitness, guiding BetterUp's social mission and impact to bring the science of peak performance and human potential into the hands of people worldwide, influencing the vision of BetterUp's platform, community and member experience, and expanding the global community. So that's what he'll be working on.
And he wrote that self-optimization is not about fixing something that's broken, it's about becoming the best version of ourselves. So if you want to read his full biography, then just either Google BetterUp. I think we had an article on our website as well at itvnews.com/royals. So Harry is a working guy. We're led to believe that this is a paid employment, aren't we? This isn't something he's doing pro bono.
They haven't commented on how he'll be paid or whether he'll be paid or how much, if he is getting paid. So I don't think we know or could comment on that.
Everybody said that Harry, he should work. Now he's left the royal family and they've got their deals with Netflix and Spotify, and now they've got other jobs as well. I mean, he's doing what he said he would do and becoming self-financing and filling his time in areas in which he feels passionate.
Yeah, he's always said how passionate he is about mental health. He says that's as important as physical health. And in his sort of mission statement about why he is joining BetterUp, he said that during his decade in the military, he learned that we don't just need to build physical resilience, but also mental resilience. And in the years since, his understanding of what resilience means and how we can build it has been shaped by the thousands of people and experts I've been fortunate to meet and learn from. And I think this is, we knew that Harry cared about mental health. We know that he's done a lot of work in this area. And I think this is why perhaps people were slightly taken aback in the Oprah interview when Meghan was speaking about her own mental health. And then Harry actually said in that interview, I was sort of ashamed to say anything and I didn't know how to help her. And that doesn't add up with the work that he's done and the things that he's saying here. We know that he cares deeply and has done a lot of work around mental health. So for him to have then said in that interview that he didn't know what to do, it didn't add up. Yeah,
exactly. And he'd launched the Heads Together project as well. And I must admit, a lot of the comments on my Twitter. Now, full disclosure, my Twitter is either very, very pro Harry and Meghan or very, very anti Harry and Meghan. And as ever with Twitter, there's never very much in between. But a lot of the comments on Twitter were about, well, hold on a minute, you weren't there for Meghan when she was suffering mental health. That might be unfair, but it certainly was a theme that developed after he took that role. Now, Meghan eloquently expressed how much she was suffering when they spoke to Oprah. She also said that she sought help from the royal family, was told that there wasn't any, because she wasn't a paid employee as such. But then, a lot of people have asked, well, couldn't Harry have given her the mobile number of the therapist that he'd seen, or couldn't she have asked the medical household, which is the bit of the royal family which is dedicated to providing medical support to the senior members of the family, for some help? And that is a point, isn't it? If you have spent a long time trying to destigmatize mental health, why then would you say that you have been ashamed to admit that Meghan herself was suffering?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe he will use his own personal experiences to help address some of these issues. The difference between knowing something exists and it becoming personal. Perhaps he will use that to help him with this role.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that for him was a new experience, having someone very close to him suffering in the way that Meghan clearly was. Maybe that was new for him. And actually, it's, he might have been talking about it for many years, but he'd never actually experienced someone very close to him having suffering, and he didn't quite know what to do. But anyway, he's got this job with BetterUp, and they, I think they're very fortunate to have someone of his caliber and his experience in this field. So we wish him well in that role. Meanwhile, at Archewell, the foundation that Harry and Meghan founded, there have been some personnel moves. The chief executive or chief of staff, Catherine St. Laurent, who used to work for the Gates Foundation, she's out, or they've given her an advisory role, but I think she's basically leaving or stepping down as the role as chief of staff. And she's being replaced as executive director by James Holt, who is currently working for the Sussexes based in the UK, and who himself used to work for Kensington Palace communications team.
Yeah, that's right. So Catherine, who was on their press release, they say she was acting executive director. She has.
I never saw the word acting previously, by the way, and it certainly wasn't on her LinkedIn. So I don't know where that acting came from, but that was the first time I'd seen it.
They say, has transitioned to this senior advisory role for Archewell, and this transition is happening in conjunction with the launch of her new social impact firm.
Right, so no more details on that.
She'll still be linked in some way to Archewell.
Yes,
but not in the same role.
Yeah, or some people might ask, well, maybe they've created a role to make it look like she's not leaving. Other people might just, will argue otherwise, as they often do on my Twitter notifications. Nevertheless, she is stepping down as the executive director and being replaced by James Holt, who actually, interestingly, used to work with people like Jason Knauf, who was the member of staff who reported Meghan's bullying claims. And so he was very much part of the Kensington Palace machinery, and then moved with the Sussexes when the split happened, and has been working for them ever since their departure from the royal family. He now presumably will be based in California, so he'll move from London to California to take up that role for the Archewell Foundation. Clearly someone who Meghan and Harry respect and like very much.
Yeah, and the other name is the award-winning producer Ben Browning. He has recently joined Archewell as head of content. So he's been nominated before for an Academy Award, a BAFTA Award, a Golden Globe. So I think he's quite a big name to join the team.
Knows about his content, yes, and then he'll be working both for the Netflix content with Archewell and the Spotify podcast as well. Actually, yeah, we had another podcast since the one we had earlier in the year. Have I just missed it?
No, nothing. There was the festive, the holiday special, wasn't there, at the end of last year? But we haven't had anything since.
No. Okay, so maybe there's a job for the head of content was to make the podcast a bit more regular. Who knows? Right, shall we? Did we do Greece, or did we talk about it at the top, but we never actually did Greece properly?
At the top, yeah. How much we'd love to be there, especially. I mean, it's getting darker and darker here by the minute. It's chucking it down.
It was raining here a little while ago. It's not currently at the moment. I can actually see my daffodils outside, including my narcissi daffodils, are looking a bit drenched. Not the best of days today. We could be in Greece, we could be in Athens, which is where Prince Charles and Camilla are. Actually, going on, replies to my tweets. There's a lot of people saying, well, why are they going? It's COVID at the moment. Is this really a necessary trip? And I suppose, you can make that argument. Greece is celebrating or commemorating its bicentennial anniversary after it was founded in 1821, after the end of the Ottoman Empire. And 100 years after that, Prince Philip was born, and 100 years after that, Prince Charles is there. So there are a lot of links between Greece and the royal family. Nevertheless, people have been asking, well, why are they there? Why was this a necessary visit given everything that's going on with COVID at the moment?
So they were invited by the Prime Minister of Greece, and they've gone at the request of the British government. Everything is being done in a COVID secure way. They'll have been tested, all the media with them have been tested, so everything is being conducted as safely as possible, and it is an official working visit.
Yes, but nevertheless, it's not something that he had to go to. The British government asked him to, but they certainly made a choice to go. And I think it's just a lot of people have been asking whether or not that was something they should have done during the pandemic. But nevertheless, Greece was invited. There were other world leaders there. It wasn't just Prince Charles and Camilla. A lot of people had descended on Greece to mark this big occasion. And we mentioned about his dad being born as he was in Corfu because he was part of the Greek royal family 100 years ago. How times have changed. Then things do change in 100 years. Just ask Prince Philip. And he made a speech. Prince Charles made a speech last night. So have a listen to what he said about his father, but also he spoke about his grandfather. So this will be Prince Andrea. And he spoke about his grandmother, Princess Alice of Battenberg. Have a listen.
My wife and I could not be more delighted to be back in Greece, which has long held the most special place in my heart. After all, Greece is the land of my grandfather and of my father's birth nearly 100 years ago, in the centenary year of Greek independence. Later, it was in Athens that my dear grandmother, Princess Alice, during the dark years of Nazi occupation, sheltered a Jewish family, an act for which, in Israel, she is counted as righteous among the nations.
So there were lots of pictures in Greece as well. You know, they have those that ceremonial walk that the soldiers do there, which is always quite an interesting one. I mean, ceremonial walks often are quite interesting. Like, why in the UK do our soldiers wear those massive bearskins on their head? And it's all dating back to military history, but there were some pictures that we'll show you as we speak of the visit of Prince Charles and Camilla. But we couldn't go, unfortunately, but we would have liked to have been there.
So those comments that the speech that we played you was at a dinner last night. So that was
Wednesday
night, and that was at the presidential mansion in Athens. And I thought it was, he spoke very warmly about his family, but he also spoke about the ties that join the UK with Greece and how those remain strong and vital and make a profound difference to our shared prosperity and security. And he said, just as our histories are closely bound together, so too are our futures. So that's obviously a nod to our ties in a post-Brexit world.
Yeah, and obviously we've spoken before about how the royal family uses that sort of soft diplomacy to go and say, we may have left the European Union, but we're still your friends and we're still here. And you know, often these visits are basically, they're not royal visits, they're diplomatic visits, they're charm offensives. You know, they say very nice things about their hosts and everyone feels much nicer about everything. And then we go and see whether it has any effect on trade deals and all the rest of it. But soft diplomacy is what the royals are used for rather than hard diplomacy. And that's kind of what this visit was about. Interestingly, we were saying about their visits, they've done two others, haven't they, Charles and Camilla? One when he went to a funeral in the Middle East, Q8, wasn't it? And also they went together to mark Germany's National Day of Mourning, which they hold around about the November time. And that in itself was quite a significant visit. So they have done visits, they are done in a COVID secure way, but diplomats and government officials are often exempt from the travel restrictions. That includes members of the royal family, but also, for example, when diplomats were negotiating Brexit at around Christmas time, they didn't have to quarantine every time they came back to the UK. So they do get the exclusion. They are excluded from these things. So you know, if we didn't have cameras and things, maybe Prince Charles and Camilla would like nip off to the beaches in Corfu and go and catch a bit of sun before they came home, but they won't.
No. So very, very quick visit. They were there, I think, 24 hours. if that. So they're on their way back now.
And got to go on the Voyager as well, which I still haven't been on it since they've repainted it in the sort of Union Jack colours. Because if you don't know about the plane that the royal family used, but also senior government ministers use as well here in the UK, it's a military plane. It was grey, effectively, like any old grey military plane. But they decided that it needed a splash of paint to make it a bit more of a flying the flag for the UK when these missions go abroad. I still haven't been on it since, but then no one goes anywhere these days.
No.
Anything left on my? There's one thing, quite an important thing left on my list, is about the problem, and again something very close to Camilla's heart, which is the problem of domestic violence, particularly exacerbated by lockdown and people, particularly women, mostly women, being locked in effectively with their abusers. And Camilla was on social media to spread the word about a scheme which is being extended. What was it called, Lizzie? Rail to Refuge.
Yeah, exactly. And they shared a message on social media from her yesterday.
Lockdown has been hard for everyone, but for the survivors of domestic abuse, it's been life-threatening. I'm delighted to hear that Britain's train companies are extending the Rail to Refuge scheme for longer to provide free travel to a safe refuge for those fleeing domestic abuse. If you need help, contact Women's Aid for support and access to the Rail to Refuge scheme. Thank you.
So a very important issue, that one, and as you say, close to Camilla's heart. I remember when we went to Northern Ireland with her a short while ago, and we were hearing from women and charities there about the terrible problem of that lockdown has had on women who were already victims, sufferers of domestic abuse.
Yeah, the Duchess has done a lot of work highlighting pre-pandemic, but also during the pandemic, home is supposed to be the place where you feel safe. But of course, for domestic violence victims, it's probably the most terrifying place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. One final point, actually, before we leave, because again, a lot of this was on my social media, and people were asking for our opinions on it. We were speaking last week about Gayle King, who was authorised by Meghan and Harry to speak on her breakfast show about the phone call that she'd had, that Meghan and Harry, that Harry had had with his family, his father and his brother. And she, if you remember, we played you that clip when she said that the phone calls were not productive. A lot of people were asking, what was the difference between that and us sort of saying, raising question marks over her ability to do that now in the new era that Meghan's friends speak of, and the stuff that's been in the Sunday Times, for example, in recent weeks, when they've kind of said, oh, Harry and William connect. Is there a difference? Because that was something that people had asked us to discuss. What's your view?
So I think there is a difference between saying that a conversation has happened and in giving an assessment of how that conversation or conversations are going, because that's essentially giving a running commentary of how relationships are. I think there is quite a big difference between the two.
So you think, had Gayle King said, I phoned the Sussexes at the weekend and I know that he's spoken to his father and brother, and stopped there, the difference was that Gayle King said, well, from what I hear is those talks were unproductive, but Harry was just glad that they've at least started a process.
Yeah, because I think by giving a running commentary or some sort of commentary on those talks and what's happening in them, that leads, I mean, how can either side feel like, if they're having conversations, if they're going out into the public domain, how the next time they have a conversation, they're going to be able to trust that conversation doesn't end up in the public?
But what if William authorised some of his sources to speak to one of the Sunday newspapers to say, oh, yes, you can brief out anonymously that this conversation has happened? It's not massively different. I think the argument from Team Sussex or the Sussex supporters, or as they're known on Twitter as the Sussex Squad, is that, well, they're just doing it in a very open way rather than doing it with all the sort of briefing and background and anonymous sourcing. And I just wondered whether they've got a point.
But we now know sort of what happened within that call. I mean, they might as well do a Zoom meeting like this and post it on Twitter if they're going to make it open. I mean, that's not.
You know what? That's quite a good idea. I wouldn't complain, because certainly I would like to have listened in. I'd like to have a transcript of the phone call that Harry had with his father and brother after that Oprah interview.
I just think there's a difference between saying that a call or contact was made and between giving that and giving an assessment of how that conversation is going. Because how do you move forward to ever have another one if you think what we talk about is going to end up? And
as far as I'm aware, that since Gayle King said that on the Breakfast Show, she hasn't actually said anything else since then. So it's not as if it was a daily update.
No.
Maybe they reflected on some of the, on the way in which it happened. I don't know. But anyhow, just thought I had that discussion because we were asked to have it, and we like to respond to our viewers and listeners and their comments, even though some of them are. Well, at least on my Twitter, some of them are rather unpleasant to read. But anyway, that's part of the course these days for social media. You have to put up with fairly high levels of abuse.
Yes.
Not that it's very pleasant. Anyhow, right. Thanks for being with us this week. It's a sort of an eclectic mix this week of royal things, as opposed to one big interview with Oprah Winfrey. Makes a change to return to some more normal royal news. I kind of feel like we're in a royal,
Hopefully it won't be too long before we can return to our studio too.
Return to our studio, go out on actual visits with actual royals and see actual people, and maybe even go on a tour.
That would be lovely. So basically we'd like normality back, right?
Yes, please. Anytime you like. Take care of yourselves and keep safe. The lockdown's still on for now, but thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.